Hi, so I'm over at Hope Church. You might recognise the background. And here with Chris, we're just going to do a recording following up from Sunday's sermon. And we're going to be chatting a bit about vision and values. And Chris, I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about the vision for Hope Church and some of the values that you've got. It'd be great.
Totally. I mean, I was thinking about it's a funny time to be thinking vision, isn't it? Because often vision contains details and planning and ways forward, and I think that what God is doing through this pandemic is just really getting rid of all the forms we've done and been used to in church. So, vision is a funny one to be talking about, but really important too. And so I think for Hope Church, my vision is, it's broader, it's not detailed right now because we don't know where we're going to be and when we're going to get to meet. But it's really about establishing a worshipping community here. It's about getting people together and stewarding the presence of God in a way that's really powerful and empowering them to go out into the world and impact all the spheres they're in the workplace. And then in terms of Elmsbrook particularly, kind of us all figuring out how we can serve particularly Elmsbrook. And so with the cafe, still trying to figure out how we can do that like you guys are doing with the bridge, probably takeaway. And that seems to really engage the neighbours. And other ways that we might be able to help them with prayer or things they need and the practical ways. And so vision's really, my perspective on vision I think has changed quite a lot recently from this big kind of Vision Sunday thing that we historically would have in church to really thinking more about the kingdom. I've been praying the Lord's Prayer and thinking about your kingdom come, as on earth as it is in heaven, and thinking, okay, so God, you've established your kingdom in heaven. How do you want to establish it here? You're not faced by a restriction. So what does your kingdom come look like in a restriction of 6 people? What does your kingdom come look like with lonely people in individual houses? So they're kind of some of the thoughts I'm having about vision at the moment.
Yeah, cool. I remember you telling me about going blessing people's homes in the community and all this.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I probably shouldn't have been. I should have more faith. But we threw out there on Facebook, on the Elmsbrook Facebook page, does anyone? Well, I'm the local trainee minister on the estate, and we would love to pray over your house. If you'd like us to, we don't need to come in. We can just we can anoint your door with oil, and we can just pray a blessing over your house. Anyone up for it? And I got a whole bunch of responses on Facebook. And we did. We prayer walked, which we do anyway. And then we stopped at the houses that we'd been given permission, and we just did an extra kind of special blessing of prayer. And I was really amazed and challenged by how hungry people are for prayer, how people don't often say no when you ask. And how even if there are different faiths and spiritualities, that there's still value put on prayer. And so, that was a really great opportunity to engage with the community with prayer.
Cool. Yeah. And you saying about the cafe. I know you've been doing your pop-up cafe before the COVID, but there's perhaps an opportunity for something in the future, isn't there, around a cafe? And do you want to say a little bit?
Possibly. You talk about in the eco-center in the building. Yeah. I mean, it's a possibility that I think would be wonderful. They're building I think they're calling it an eco hub. Maybe it's a community centre, essentially next to the business centre that will be built, I think, in a year or two. And we're looking at putting a bid in for a cafe to have a presence there more permanently and serving really good coffee and kind of doing a lot of what you guys are doing at the bridge and what the guys at Filter are doing, just kind of combining really excellent service with kindness and biblical principles. And so that's exciting. I'm hoping to do that, and there's lots of people putting bids in, and so we'll see what goes on with that. But in the meanwhile, God's really made a way with the pop-up cafe, which I'm doing through the Eco Committee, and we were doing, and so that was kind of once a week, very simple, kind of a few hours in the morning every Friday, and I'm still bumping into neighbours who say, when are you going to make coffee again? And it's amazing how the small things just serving people that really sticks with them, and I've got to know people just making coffee, so I hope to make more of it.
And it's just reminded me of, because you were working in the school, weren't you, before you started your training, and I guess that's a similar thing, is it?
It's almost like God had a plan. It was I think really a divine thing to be at the school gate every morning, saying hi to the parents and the kids, and I still know the kids on the estate from there, and they wave at me and say hi, Mr. Hunt, and they still know me in that capacity, and so that's been a really good connection. And I was just thinking the other day that I missed that actually. I think that was a really enjoyable experience just to be there for the community in that way. So yeah, God really has placed me in these small ways, invisible ways in the community, so that people just know my face and maybe hopefully more willing to talk about Jesus with me at some point.
Cool. Yeah, we as you know, we've just opened up the cafe again at Emmanuel, the Bridge Cafe.
Yeah,
and we've sort of started to stand outside and just chat to people as they're, in a similar way to what you were just describing. It's been such fun just to be outside, just to chat and just to see people as they're going to school and say hi. And I think this is maybe leads into saying a little bit about Emmanuel really, because this is part of what we really feel God's calling us to in this season, is to be a church that's looking outwards. And I think we've for a long time, or maybe I've had this idea of gathering people and growing it to be something bigger and bigger numbers and this sort of thing, but I think the pandemic's just cut across all of that really, and just created an opportunity to completely rethink about what's church about. And we're really trying to focus on our small groups and develop that, and people meeting in small numbers there, but also this sense of looking out, being sent out. We've had for a number of years some prophetic pictures from Ezekiel 47 about the water flowing out from the temple and going out and getting deeper, and healing and food and these sorts of things. And I really feel that's a sort of word for this time, that we, as we go out, as we get into deeper water, as it were, the healing and the food and the fruit will increase. And we've done a couple of little tentative steps. We've done a car park service, and we've sat outside the church and prayed for a couple of weeks. But I really feel in this season, there's this going out into the great unknown.
Yeah, definitely. And God normally or often meets us once we step out. He doesn't tend to resource us beforehand, does he? Or at least that's been my experience. And I think so many ministries, you hear that testimony that you show up first, and then God meets that faith action. So I remember you used to put a sofa out front of ECB with a sign, didn't you? And it is about that. I often remind myself of Heidi Baker's phrase, "Stop for the one," which she says all the time. And she's a great model to me, because she has tens of thousands of orphans. She's got the numbers everyone wants to see in church, but she's never looked for them. She's always stopped for the one person. And then God has added, because he knows she doesn't care about building her structure, building her ministry. She just she cares about the one person she walks past on the dirt road who could need prayer. And so I really am reminded of that, and I think that is what God's calling us as churches to do right now. And those conversations outside the cafe with parents or people who are feeling lonely or anxious about the pandemic or what's going to happen in the future, that's where God is right now, I think. So it's exciting.
I had this cool conversation with a yoga teacher outside the cafe, talking to me about getting her classes going and how it's going to happen. And so it was interesting. We were on a Zoom call yesterday, weren't we, with your college?
Yeah.
And the principal of the college was talking about this research that has been done. And I think in the Church of England, it's about 1.6% of the UK population who's engaging with church. And it reminded me when he was saying about the parable of the lost sheep. And Jesus went out to the 99, to the one, I'm sorry. But actually the reality is that it's turned around now, and it's 1.6 that are in, and there's a whole load for us to go out.
Yeah, there is, and I have a real passion, and I think part of when you're starting a church, maybe you start thinking about the small number too, but I think also there's this 1%, 1 or 2%, which is a scary statistic, need to know that they're empowered, and I think that this is partly what's going on with all the platforms being removed, we're getting rid of this whole there's a leader at the top on the platform who knows everything, who can do ministry, and you guys just come and get fed. And actually, there's too much work for us. The harvest is too big, and we can't do it all. And I'm sure you know that. And I think that's part of what I want to encourage, ECB and Hope Church and just the Christians in Bicester in general to realise their authority in Jesus, to pray for people themselves, to cast out demons, to heal the sick, to look after the widow and the orphan. And I think that as we do that, like we said, God will meet us, but He'll also meet us in healing, like the Ezekiel passages. And I think that's part of it. It's not focusing on that 1% anymore, but it's letting them know their power in God. And then saying, give it a go, and they'll come back, like the disciples came back to Jesus. Hey, we went out and we did what you said, and guess what? It worked. The demons fled, and people received us, and people got healed. And so,
yeah. And I mean, the other thing I think at Emmanuel that we're aware of is that there are a number of people who've struggling really, and with the lockdown and all these things. So it seems to me there's this going out, but alongside that there's the care, the pastoral care, the support for those, I think particularly families and parents, or really all the generations, and I think that's trying to sort of walk those two things out, the being sent out, but also the caring for those who are within the family of God as well. And I mean, as I say, it's something that we really want to sort of prioritise around small groups, people meeting in homes. I know this is something that you also, feel passionate about doing. And it seems to be this. I mean, I'm not really sure about other churches, but moving away from the big gathering to really nurturing and caring for people in small groups, empowering them in their ministry, and sending them out to what God wants to do.
Yeah, and I think as we look at our neighbours, our literal neighbours around us, and look after them and pull them in, I think the church has many choices and responses they could make, but my hope is that when we meet together in a year or two, or whenever we are allowed to meet again in the fullest way, that we'll bring with us our neighbours and the people that we looked after during this time, and all the people that have been forgotten about. And wouldn't that be amazing? It'd be, more than just like one mission day that we might do, or one season once a year, that we have been doing this over 6 months. And and I think that's part of what God is doing. It's challenging me, because not everyone is easy to love, and so even on Elmsbrook, I tend to pick the people that it's most easy with, and I'm really being challenged by my training and things I'm reading. I've got a whole street of people that I still need to work on just right outside my door, to bring cakes to love, to see how they're doing, and even looking at wider Elmsbrook before I look at just the neighbours on either side of me isn't, I think, what God is calling me to. I think He's saying, really look small, look next door.
Absolutely. I can remember when I was doing my training in Sheffield, and I had this sort of passion for doing missionary work and going overseas and this and that and the other, and I can remember standing in the window of our house, bay window, looking out, could see about 4 houses, and I just really felt the Lord, it's like, Lord, where do you want, where can I go, where do you want to send me? And he said to me, there's enough for you to do in the houses you can see from here.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's a shame, I'd have fancied going to the Philippines.
Seems like exciting.
But I mean, I think this is really where I came to preparing for Sunday, is that, if we know what God's calling us to do and gifting us to do, and particularly the context that He's calling us to do, then He'll release us and use our gifts, as you say, everybody.
Yeah.
It's not just the professionals. It's all of His people. So, that's good. Brilliant. That's good. Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
COVID handshake.
Yeah. We're allowed to do that.
I'm not sure.